For this recipe, you are going to need a nice big mixing bowl, some sourdough starter, flour, water, a good whisk, but your hands always work too, and some sort of kitchen scale. This is a really inexpensive one that I use to measure out ingredients because I will be going by grams. So to get started, you need a very healthy and active, can you see all of those bubbles? Sourdough starter. And normally I measure this out, but we're just going to go with it. We're going to use approximately 1 cup of starter, and then I just like to get in there with my hands and get that out. I don't want to waste anything, and this is so nice and bubbly. I fed this starter late last night so that it had enough time overnight to be active. I baked a lot over the weekend, so I had really used it down, so I needed to feed it so I could bake bread today. So we're going to do sourdough starter, and then I have some tepid water. This is room temperature water. All of the measurements will be in the blog post. I'm just going to use my Danish Whisk, and I'm just going to mix this together until it looks like it's all combined. I don't want to see any pieces of sourdough starter floating. I'm just going to mix that. It almost has like a milky consistency to it. So I'm going to make sure all of that's done, and then I'm going to start adding my flour. And I like to add it little by little. I don't like to add it all at one time. So I'm just going to go ahead and try to incorporate that before I add the next round of flour. And I have pre-measured all of my ingredients, so I don't have to stop. I really like to do that. And I'm just going to mix. And you want it to be mixed fairly well. You obviously don't want any lumps of flour. And when it gets to the point where it starts to get difficult to do with the whisk, I'll take over with my hand. And you may need, depending on, anybody who's baked knows that humidity plays a part in your baking. This is like, it's a rough estimate of what you need. You may need, sometimes I need a little bit more flour, sometimes not. It just depends. So this is looking really good. And I have one more jar of flour to add in here. And I'm just gonna do about half of that. Did you see that poof of flour? I'm gonna add about half of that and get this all incorporated. And when I'm finished adding all of the flour, we will be back. Okay, that was about 5 minutes of hand kneading, and as you can see, it's nice and smooth. When I started, it was pretty sticky. Now I can pick it up and I kind of stretch it a little bit and push it back down. I wanted to make sure to get all of that flour incorporated in there. Now what I'm going to do is let my dough rest, and I'm going to put a clean kitchen towel over it. If your bowl is smaller, you can put a lid on it, but I'm going to put something over this and let it sit right here on my counter in the sunlight for 2 hours and just let it rest, and it should rise. So I will see you back here after the 2-hour mark. Now that our dough has sat for about 2 hours, I'm going to take the clean kitchen towel off, and you can see it has risen a little bit and it's not quite as sticky. So what I'm going to do is add the salt to the sourdough that we have going here, and then I'm going to add a little bit of water to help the salt mix into the sourdough. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to like punch it. Actually pinch it is more, not punching, but pinch it. And I'm just going to try to get this all worked in, turning the bowl as I need to. You want to make sure that you don't feel any more of those grains of salt. And you also don't want any water just pooling. You want to make sure that it all gets incorporated. And then we are going to make sure. There, it's going. I don't know if you can see that. It's getting, see how it's bouncing back? And I like to stretch it a little bit as I pull up, and it's coming away from the walls of the bowl. I like to try to get it all in there. This is just kneading it a little bit. I want it to be smooth, but I really don't want it to be wet. So I'm just going to keep working that until I feel like, and you'll get a feel for it. I can feel that my dough is, it's like springy, and that's what you want. And then I'm gonna finish doing this, and then when I finish, I'm gonna do it for probably 5 more minutes, and then I'll show you what's next. So if my bowl wasn't so big, I would have a lid for it, or like one of those nice bowl covers. I'm using plastic wrap. I'm going to put this in the fridge now between 8 and 10 hours. I'm actually gonna do it overnight. You could absolutely let this sit on your counter and it's going to rise, but it's sourdough and I wanna let it sit as long as possible without overproofing it for fermentation. So I'm gonna put this in the fridge for the night and we will check back in the morning and pick up the process again. Good morning, friends. I have taken the sourdough out of the fridge. It stayed in overnight for a bulk ferment. I'll take the plastic off and you can see it's a little jiggly and it's a little sticky, but not terrible. So what I'm going to do is lightly flour a clean counter, and then I'm going to turn out my dough. You know what? Let me turn the dough out and we'll be right back. Now that the dough is on the counter, I am going to add just a little bit of flour so that I can handle it. And we are going to divide this into 2 loaves. So I have a nice bench scraper that I'm just going to, and you want them to be kind of even. Sorry about that, Bear was tormenting one of the cats. So you're gonna divide your dough into 2 pretty much equal parts. And then what we're going to do with this dough, and you don't really want to handle it too much because it might be, it could make it really stiff and tough. So we're gonna try the best we can to shape this into a rectangle. Let me adjust the angle, maybe it'd be better for you. There we go. So we're gonna put this into the shape of a rectangle, and then we're gonna fold the sides up so it's like trifold, and then we're gonna turn that around and we're gonna roll that, stretching while we roll it, and then we're gonna do something called putting tension into it. So I'm gonna pull it back towards me and then push it away. Pull and push. And I do a slight rotation as I do this, and you'll see that your dough starts to form a ball. And I'm gonna do this a few times until I start to feel like the dough is bouncy. So I feel like that's pretty good. So we're gonna say that one's done. Now we're gonna repeat that with the second one. I'm gonna do a little bit more flour, and I'm just going to shape this as best I can into a rectangle. It's still a little cold, but you can still work with it. Okay, so I'm gonna do my trifold. All right, and then turn it, and then as I roll it, I'm stretching it towards me. So roll, stretch, roll, stretch, roll, stretch, roll. Now I'm going to do my push and pull, push and pull, push and pull, push, pull, and I'm rotating it. I'm gonna do this until I feel like the dough is nice and smooth and it bounces back, which is very nice. So I'm going to put that one there. Now I'm going to let them rest for 20 minutes on the counter. So I'm going to set a timer and then we'll come back after the 20 minutes. Now that the loaves have rested for 20 minutes, we are going to repeat what we just did with the fold, roll, and pull and push, but we're going to be a little bit more gentle this time and we're not going to stretch it. So I'm going to do a little bit more flour. You don't need a lot, just don't want it to stick. We're going to be very gentle. I'm going to use my bench scraper to help me turn over the loaf, and I'm going to put it down, and I'm just patting it so you can see it still has its round shape. So I'm going to fold that side and then that side, and then I am going to turn it long ways, and I'm not going to roll, I'm just going to roll this time and go right into my pull, push, pull, push, pull, push. You may have to do this, I don't know, up to 10 times until it feels the way you want it to feel. It should feel smooth, springy, bouncy. It really shouldn't be sticky. And if you can see, it's bouncy. There's some air bubbles forming. So I'll do this a couple more times. Now this time, instead of letting the dough rest on the counter, we are going to put it in a proofing basket. Now, if you have one of these fancy Bannetons with the insert, just go ahead and flour that a little bit and then dump the excess off, and then gently use your bench scraper to turn over your loaf and put it in the basket. And we're going to cover this with either plastic wrap, or you can get a shower cap from the dollar store. They do have some bowl covers that you can use, some beeswax. I just use plastic wrap. I don't have another Banneton, so I am using just a plain basket with some cheesecloth. So that's what I'm going to do with my second one. So let's repeat that for the second one. I'm just going to use the bench scraper to lift the loaf, turn it over, and gently fold the one side and then the other side, and then we're going to turn that lengthwise and just roll it up, and then immediately go into pull, push, pull, push, pull, push, and at the same time I'm rotating it. So when I push it, I'd rotate and pull, rotate, push, rotate, pull, rotate. And then you keep doing this until your loaf feels and looks how you want it. This is looking really, really nice. You can see it's bouncy. So I am going to go ahead and flour this cheesecloth. I'm going to take my bench scraper, put a little bit there for the bench scraper. Take my bench scraper, turn that loaf over into there. I am going to cover these with plastic wrap, and we are going to place them in the refrigerator for another final rest of 2 hours. So I've removed the bread, the loaves of bread from the fridge in their proofing baskets, and I'm about to put my cast iron Dutch oven. You do not need to use a Dutch oven. I like to use a Dutch oven because it helps the bread maintain its shape, and it kind of contains it. You can do something called free bake or open bake, where you just put your bread on your loaf on a pan and you can bake it like that. It's whatever you want, but this is a cast iron Dutch oven, and I am going to preheat my Dutch oven in the oven at 375, 400. My range run and my oven run really hot, so that's what I'm going to do. You may need to even do 425, 450, maybe even 475. So I'm going to put that in there, and I'm going to prep the loaves. While the Dutch oven is preheating, I have turned out one of my loaves onto some parchment paper, and I have placed some flour over top of the loaf because I'm going to make some cuts with a clean razor blade. If you have a lame, which I do not yet, that will work much better than an open razor blade. But the flour will help your cuts be more pronounced. So I'm just gonna do a very basic one way, the other way, and then some shallow cuts like that. It doesn't really matter to me what it looks like because we're just gonna eat it anyway. But if you were giving this as a gift or something, then absolutely you would want some sort of design, and you can, you know, really make this almost anything. And you want to go deep enough because as the bread bakes, it's going to spread out and rise up. So I am going to get the Dutch oven out of the oven and place this in the Dutch oven, and I'm going to bake it for 30 minutes with the lid on. And here is that first loaf out of the oven. If you can listen, it is so crispy on the outside, nice and chewy on the inside. You should really wait until it's completely cold before you slice into this baby. And I would definitely recommend using a serrated knife. Anything else, you're just gonna push it down and you're gonna destroy your crumb and those nice air pockets that you know so well with sourdough. So that's the first one, and I'm just gonna repeat the process for my second loaf. So that's sourdough bread, the way I do it. I hope this has been helpful for you. If you need, if you're local and you need a source for a sourdough starter, hit me up. I think I can hook you up with some. And if you need to start your own starter, you'd like to try starting your own starter, I will link that video down below. It is not complicated. Establishing a starter is a little time consuming. Sorry about my phone, but it's worth it in the end because I've had mine for years and I can do stuff like this, and whenever we need fresh bread, I just make it. So until next time, I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.